My narcissistic mother is demanding I invite her manipulative boyfriend to my wedding. She insists on him walking me down the aisle even though he abused me all my life. I hate my stepfather Dave with all of my being. Dave has been in my life since I was 6 years old and he was the man my mom cheated on my dad with. I always felt weird being dragged over to Dave's house by my mom. He always stank of cigarettes and I always felt like he didn't want me there. When I was 9 we moved far away for Dave's job and that angered me because although my parents had 50-50 custody of me, I only saw my dad for a total of 3 weeks a year. When I was 10 I made a joke to my mom as we were driving home from school and she laughed. I said I was going to tell Dave the joke because I knew it would make him mad. My mom slammed on the brakes and turned faster on me than I could blink. She started screaming at me for even thinking of doing that, and started yelling at me to respect my father. She referred to him as my father. She then yelled at me to get out of the car and that I was going to walk home, which was an hour walk. I got out and she sped away before I fully shut the door. I sat on the side of the road sobbing for 20 minutes but she never came back. I decided to walk to my grandparents' house which was 45 minutes in the opposite direction of home. They weren't home so I had no choice but to walk the now hour and 45-minute walk home. I had been gone for 3 hours when I finally walked through the door exhausted. My mother glanced up from the book she was reading on the couch and that was the most acknowledgement I got from her for the rest of the day. When I was 11 I was sitting in the family room cross-stitching when I heard Dave call my name. I acknowledged him and he walked into the room and said, he then turned and walked away. I sat in stunned silence for a moment before bursting into tears and running to my room. I was being bullied at school for my weight but I was trying to not take it to heart because kids can be cruel. But now all my worst fears were affirmed by an adult. Hours later my mom came in angry with me for not going out and helping Dave when he asked me to. Between sobs, I explained to my mom what he had said to me. She shook her head and told me to get over it and that it was just Dave's sense of humor. I didn't eat anything for the next 4 days until I finally caved and ate whatever I could find in the kitchen. I hated myself for being so weak and this kicked off an ed that I only started to recover from when I moved out at 18. I never received an apology from either of them. Dave was also a drunk. When my mom would work nights I hid in my room listening to him scream, swear and throw things around the house. One day he backed into our gate with his car and I heard him bashing on it with a hammer for hours one night which terrified me. He only laid hands on me twice thankfully. Both times I told my mom and she dismissed it both times. When I was 13 my mom arrived at my school in tears telling me she had broken up with Dave. I broke into the biggest smile and told her how happy I was for her and that we could finally be free and happy. I'll admit it was an insensitive thing to say, but I couldn't contain how elated I was. We moved into my grandparents' home and it was the best month of my life. Then my grandparents decided to take a 2-month trip across the country and that's when Dave started to try and win my mom back. It started with flowers and chocolates at the door. Then he would buy a full week of groceries. My mom was starting to fall for it but not fully, until he pulled out his end game, inviting me to do stuff this man had never taken an interest in.
I figured I'd find you in your natural habitat, the couch, since you're such a fat couch potato who does nothing but sit around and complain about everything all day long. I'm tired of it, we're gonna make you lose weight. I need you to help me in the backyard.
Me before. But now he was going on and on to my mom about how much he missed being my dad and how much he loved me. When I heard that I wanted to end him, he never loved me and he was not my dad nor was he even a father figure. He knew how much I love whales so he booked a whale watching tour for just the 2 of us. When my mom told me I flat out refused to go. This resulted in me being punished. I had to clean the entire 3-story house from top to bottom and I wasn't allowed to see any of my friends or do any of my hobbies until I apologized. That never happened and I was officially grounded for 4 months because he kept planning things and I kept refusing to go. They eventually got back together and have been ever since. The man went back to being annoyed at my existence and never attempted any more one-on-one time again. Well, now I have moved far away and am engaged to my wonderful fiancé. I have decided to invite my mom against my better judgment, but refuse to invite Dave. My wedding is in a month and I sent out wedding invitations 2 months ago. My mom's invitation was only addressed to her and had no +1 on it. She RSVP'd right away and never mentioned to me that Dave wasn't on the invitation. I thought it was some kind of miracle because I was expecting to have a giant fight with her. When she never even mentioned it I thought I might be in the clear. Now I wish I had clarified with her. My mom just called me to ask when she and her long-term boyfriend Dave should arrive at my wedding venue. We talked about it and not only did my mom just assume there was a typo with the invitation, but she also thought Dave would be walking me down the aisle. My dad, the only parent who actually cared about me, would be walking me down the aisle. Mom said my dad didn't deserve it because unlike Dave he wasn't in my life that much. The conversation with my mom can be summed up as an all-out screaming match on both our parts, and my mom telling me she wouldn't be attending if Dave wasn't allowed to come. I just said fine don't come, and hung up the phone. My mom proceeded to blow up my phone with calls and texts saying I didn't love her and if I loved her I would let the only dad I ever truly knew to perform his fatherly duty of walking me down the aisle. She started bashing my fiancé saying he was brainwashing me. That she knew her sweet little daughter was in there somewhere and I just had to let her out. I stopped responding after this. After being ignored for 5 hours my mom took to Facebook to paint this sob story of how I was pushing her and Dave out for no good reason and that they were heartbroken they had raised such an awful woman. Her post pretty much went along in the same vein as her text to me. I simply chose not to engage with her and when family and friends contacted me to ask what was going on I simply told them the truth. Most of them except a great aunt and a few of my mom and Dave's friends are on my side, but this is all getting exhausting. No matter what I say nothing's getting through to this woman and I just want it all to stop.